Sekrit. Hey everyone, you're tuned into the Sekrit Podcast, and today I'm very pleased to have a dear old friend of mine, and she wears a lot of different hats, professionally that is. She is a director, producer, visual artist, presenter and CEO of Coco to Thrill, just to name a few. And she goes by the name of Samona Naomi Williams. How you doing, Samona?
Hi, Sekrit. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that introduction. It was a lot. It was a lot, but I loved it.
I'm sure there's something I missed off there. I'm sure there is.
Maybe. But you got in that I like to wear a lot of different hats, so that's good.
Yeah.
Physically and metaphorically.
Yeah, that is true. And I've seen quite a few of those hats. I have, and they're very nice. They're very nice.
Thank you.
So, Samona, I realised as we were organising this show, getting it together, that we've known each other for quite a while. Do you know how many years it's been?
Well, since I'm only like 21, it can't be that long, right?
So we must have met each other when we were both really, really young.
We met each other right, exactly. At birth, I think it was.
Oh right,
birth,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Well,
Wow.
Yeah, to my recollection, it's been about 14 years now, which is kind of crazy.
That's a long time.
And time does fly. Time does fly. So Samona, I basically just want to start off by asking a very, very simple question, and then we'll just go from there, really. So how did you first get into the media industry?
Wow. Okay. Well, in a nutshell, I was always fascinated by media, but I was trying to go down the academic path or whatever. And back then when I was doing media, not many people were doing it, or not many people like me were doing it. It was really, really tough to get into. There wasn't social media and all these other kind of avenues that we have now. So what I did is I studied it. So I went to uni, I studied media, I studied law and journalism, and I actually became a journalist. But the story didn't stop there, right? Because even when I studied as a journalist, I did loads of work experience all over the place, from like Nickelodeon to, I actually met Flowetry at a thing called Black Pepper that we used to do back in the day. It was like a college kind of stage show thing. That's how I became friends with them, actually, because back then everyone was just trying to make it. So Flowetry were there, I think Richard Blackwood was there, a couple of others sort of names that we all know now. And I just used to literally, for free, write for all these people, right? So I used to go out and interview all these people and write for them. And that's kind of how I got into that sort of world. And then funny story, and I can tell it now because it doesn't matter anymore. But when I first went into TV, there weren't many people that looked like me, spoke like me, or were from where I'm from. And I walked into the interview with the top executive, and he looked at me and he said, I hope you're always going to be a runner. You'll never be on that screen, right? And I was like, and I actually cried. I mean, I was young, but also it was a horrible thing to say. So I cried and then I got back up, and then 2 years later I was presenting on TV. So There you go.
Yeah. Well, perseverance is a word that I do think of when I think of you, Samona. So that is a classic example of that. I mean, you mentioned about social media, people using that to be very helpful for them to get on these platforms, and you were saying that wasn't the case back when you first started. I mean, could you elaborate on, I guess, your experience or your observation of how things are so much different from when you were first starting out to someone who's getting into it now?
Yeah, so back in the day, there used to be gatekeepers, right? So anything that you would want to do, you would have to go through something. So if you're a music artist, you had to get on the radio. And if you were a TV presenter, you had to get on a TV channel, okay? And the people that control those things are very specific types of people with specific ideas of what they want to see, right? And so it was very, very difficult. I mean, you will remember when we were starting out, we didn't have any channels to showcase what we could do or our talents, okay? So we might have had the odd, I mentioned Black Pepper, we might have had the odd talent show happening at our local college and things like that. But to really get into the mainstream, like to affect big audiences, we had to go to the big channels and the big record labels and all of those people, and it was tough, and on top of that, we didn't have the technology that we have today, right? So even if you did have the talent, even if you're a great singer or a great rapper or a great presenter, getting hold of a camera, right, you had to have money. So, you had to ask people, like, does anyone have a camera? And then it'd be like, oh, someone from college has got one, like, let's go and get it. And it would be all this kind of stuff, you were just hustling all the time. And, I even remember when I was doing presenting and I got the camera, recorded it, and it's on a tape. And then you've got to get it off this tape, right? And, and then you got to pay, and it was like 80 quid at Snappy Snaps to get it done. And it was like, oh my gosh, and then you had to pay an editor because nobody had equipment to edit things. So, you had to pay for these things, and no one had any money to do all of that. So it was really, really tough, very, very difficult. And very, very few people actually managed to break through. And it's amazing now that, there's all these platforms for everyone. There's so much distribution, and you can basically, you can distribute, get out there and get to an audience all by yourself now, which is amazing.
So do you feel that you've been able to transition with the times in terms of how big a role the internet plays and social media? How's that been to ride along that?
That is an excellent question, because I struggle with this every single day, Secret honesty. So I'm from a world where I learn everything. I mean, again, I'm talking about college days, right? But when we used to edit like actually cutting the tape. Okay, so I really understand when I'm on an edit suite, like doing the technology stuff, I really understand how it's working, behind the scenes. I was a music video director, and something interesting that happened to me is I would direct music videos and get paid quite a lot of money to do it because people didn't really have many other options. You didn't have a lot of, like I said, people didn't have access to equipment and technology, and the equipment and technology was hugely, hugely expensive. So these music videos used to cost huge amounts of money, right, to do. And I remember when I realized that things were really transitioning is when I started to see kind of young up and coming rappers coming up, and they were shooting the videos themselves, right? And they were managing to get hold of cameras, and they were managing to edit it and do all of this. And there were apps all of a sudden, and there were tutorials to show you how to light things, and an app to grade things and make them look cool and do special effects that used to take me 2-3 weeks to achieve. They were doing it in seconds, right? And so that changed, that whole music video thing changed. So I don't know if you remember sort of Hype Williams days.
Yep.
So
remember that.
Right.
I remember that very
right.
well. Yeah.
So that's when, So like that's when I was kind of in music and doing music videos and stuff. And that was like that whole thing with the light bulbs that he used to do at the back. That was really hard.
Yeah.
Okay, to achieve that lighting where it was like all white and then you could just get the colors kind of popping. That was really hard. Now, you and I could probably do that right now in 10 seconds, right? And so for me, I had to adapt and I had to change. And my creativity or the ideas and the way you want to do things have to change as well. So it was interesting because I think we went from trying to achieve kind of all these special effects in music videos and, make it look like the Matrix and all of that kind of stuff. And then it moved away and it started to become something where you want to be able to shoot a music video in a house and make it look cool, in someone's house, just in their bedroom, with no special effects and make it look cool. That's kind of what you're trying to achieve now. It's not about all the bells and whistles, because everyone can do that now, and you don't really need to have too many skills to be able to do that.
Just thinking off the top of my head here, do you think the reason why people are, let me put it this way, an audience is responding to more sort of low budget type music videos, do you think that's because it's easier for them to maybe relate to that artist? So as you were saying, back in the day, like the Hype Williams years, it was all big, and you still have that today. But I've noticed that people are getting a lot of responses just from filming like on their phone or something like that, and you sort of look at it and you go, well, that's not professional. But I wonder whether people are responding because there's an element of vulnerability and someone's putting themselves out there, and it's like the audience is now looking at that person, oh well, that could be me, very easily. So I just wonder whether you think that could be the case or one of the cases.
Yeah, I do actually. It's an interesting observation. I think what's happened is, I think we've kind of gone full circle, right? Because I think what happened, I was actually explaining this to someone the other day, is that in hip hop, when we were growing up and stuff, there was like a transition in hip hop, right? So it went from kind of relatable things, about growing up poor and that kind of thing, to when Puffy came out. And it was about pouring champagne everywhere and all these fast cars. And we would watch this on screen and be like, wow, right? But this wasn't our lives, and we could not relate to it, and we couldn't even get close to it. It's like you couldn't get close to these stars. They were so big and huge, and their lives were so far from what we had that it was like, it was so impossible to kind of get close to it. And now, definitely what I'm seeing is that we're kind of going back. We've gone backwards now. So we've gone back to that whole, some artists shot their video outside my house where I grew up. And I was like, what? Right. And that's when I realized everything was changing. I was like, wow, okay. I didn't have to go to New York to shoot videos. I could just have stayed in Thornton Heath.
Yeah. Saved yourself a plane ticket.
Yeah. So, but I think definitely, we know now, like, everybody has the potential to be a star and be a success and have this lifestyle and make lots of money and all of these kind of things. And it's been made possible through social media and technology. Talent is definitely still important, because I think what's basically happened now is, because there's so much content, there's just so much of it now, right? So you've got to get to the top of the pile with that content now. So it's just a different type of struggle now. It's just a different thing you need to do to try and stand out. And it's a different problem. But it's still a problem. You still have to be talented, and you still have to know how to play the game, how to get people's attention, and how to garner your audience, right? Which is the same as back in the day, really. So, Yeah,
interesting. So you mentioned about like big stars and what have you. You've interviewed some massive names. From the likes of Beyonce to LL Cool J to Jamie Foxx to Eminem. The list goes on. Well, you actually interviewed Beyonce when she first got started? Was this when she first got started as a solo artist, or with Destiny's Child?
No, Destiny's Child, yeah.
Oh,
Destiny's
really?
Child,
Okay,
when they were
so
first, yeah. But that was a funny story, because I was working for GMTV at the time, and I wasn't even supposed to be I wasn't supposed to be interviewing people, but
okay,
that's what you got to do. You got to be like, go. So there was a presenter there who was doing the red carpet, and all the stars was coming down the red carpet. So I think Tina Turner came down, and quite a few other major stars, and then Beyonce comes down. Destiny's Child come down, and the presenter turns away because she's just like, who are they, right? And I'm like, of course, Say My Name was like my song, but no one in the mainstream, and I'm talking like, that side of things, like mainstream, had heard it before. And so I said to her, listen, can you just give me the mic? Like, can I just interview them? And she was like, if you want to interview these random nobody girls, go ahead. So so I did, and that was really, really, it's been so interesting to me to see how attitudes have changed, and how someone like Beyonce has now broken through into that mainstream now, right? And is recognizable globally, and she was just this very shy, guys, I hate to tell you, but this girl from back then, before all the money, was a star. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember when I was speaking to her, and I was just like, wow. I was like, wow, even then, before,
really?
Like, she just had it. She just had it.
Interesting.
She was very nervous. That's something as well that's weird to me now, right? Because she's this amazing, confident woman, but she was extremely nervous. I think maybe it was their first time in the UK. And of course they would get, and I don't know, maybe I don't even know if she remembers her life when it was like this, but her life then was she was getting snubbed by a lot of the press that were on the red carpet, because they didn't want to speak to her because she wasn't that big at the time. And so it's a very ruthless place, the red carpet. It's like, when you walk down, if you're not someone, you're left kind of doing this, and no one wants to talk to you, and it can even be quite embarrassing, right? And that's what was the kind of lesser stars will just walk down, and their publicists will try and get you to interview them, and 9 times out of 10 people are just like, no, we don't want them, waste of our tape.
Yeah, see, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, for me, you mentioned that song, Say My Name. Like, that was a big song. And I believe that was on Writings on the Wall album, wasn't it? And for me, that's the best Destiny's Child album to this day. But it's funny how people jump on things when it's successful, and I still see that today, like people want to be associated with success, but not necessarily your journey. But then when you make it, it's like, oh yeah, no, I knew them from that time, or I met them from back then. And so even because for me, Destiny's Child were at the very least, an established R&B group. So to hear that they were still, or Beyonce in particular, was still getting that kind of treatment is quite astonishing, really.
I know, and I've seen it so many times. I've been around a lot of stars before they were stars, and then seen their journey and when they've become stars, and the difference, like the way they're accepted. Back then when I was working for these kind of huge companies, I was one of the gatekeepers too, right? So if you wanted your music on a show, or if you wanted to appear on a show, or you wanted the interview, you would have to come through our department, right? And there were people, Mystique is another one. I remember they didn't want them, on the show, but I was in the department, and I said, no, I love them, put them on, and that's what I'm telling you, that's what it used to be. Same thing happened with So Solid. They were just like, no way. We had, honestly, everything they could possibly have said that wasn't politically correct, they said in the meeting. And I was just like, don't care. They're big, and you guys, you need to have them on. I mean, you got to remember, like, back then there were only a few stars that were really stars, right, and were really allowed to be on these types of platforms. So we had Mariah Carey, we had J-Lo, we had those types of people. We had huge Hollywood stars coming on, so trying to get, like you said, Destiny's Child were a big R&B group to us, but like to the masses, Wyclef was more well known then. They would have taken Wyclef for the interview more than they would have taken Destiny's Child.
Yeah, interesting. Did you ever go through a phase where you had to sort of fight off being pigeonholed into a particular category because of how you looked and how you sounded? That associating, oh, you're doing this particular genre. Was that something you ever came across?
Yeah, you know what? It was really difficult because you had to assimilate, right? You had to assimilate to be able to survive in that kind of environment. But at the same time, you wanted to be able to change things. And something I say to people all the time, right, is I couldn't change anything until I became a producer, right? And I had to go through hell to become a producer. Now, sometimes when people listen to some of the stories of how I became a very successful producer director, they're like, I would never do that. I wouldn't, because in a way, the way you're treated, the way, you've got to work, the hustle, the way you have to assimilate, the way you have to say yes when you want to say no. But I think I just decided that the only way that I was going to make a real difference in this industry and be able to do what I wanted to do in this industry, and eventually, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but be able to do, work at the very top echelons of hip hop, I had to play the game, right? And work my way up. And when I say work, I mean, I don't even know if they work people now like how they used to work me, right? I used to sleep at work. I used to shower at work. I used to forget people's birthdays because I was at work. And people look at me within the job I do now, and sometimes I have to say to them, listen, I had to go and get 40 or 50 cups of tea a day, and I had, on a daily basis, things thrown at me. Right? I've even had tea thrown at me by people. Like, don't want it, hate it, bring it back, right? Getting people's lunches, being shouted at, screamed at, abused, told that you're never going to make it, all of that. That real, that whole thing of when people talk about runners and they're just like, if you imagine it like a cartoon, that exactly is what was happening to me. Like, and I don't think it happens now. I think there's just too many. Social media again has changed it. I think people will be on Twitter like, do you know that this person said this? But I, yes, I worked very, very, very hard and sacrificed a lot. I couldn't do what all my other friends were doing. And, back then as well, what they used to do, and the reason why it was very, very difficult to get into media was because they never used to pay you, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So you just didn't, if you did get paid, you'd get paid such a small amount, you could hardly afford to eat, like literally. And so this is why only kind of very rich people used to be able to do media, because, they could live at home with their parents and all of those kind of things, and they'd be able to afford to do it, and so that was a challenge as well, economically. But I remember one day finding out how much the producer that I was working for got paid, and it seemed to me at that time so much money that I couldn't even imagine what I would do. You know what I mean? I was like, what would I even do with that? You know, and I think even at that stage, I never even thought I would ever make it or get to that level. You know, really, I was just trying to get like one step up, you know. And it was difficult, but I think the perseverance came from the fact that I just, well, you said it before, I'm that sort of person anyway, right? I'm like, this is a challenge, I've got to do it. But at the same time, I wanted to be able to help people, and I wanted to be able to push boundaries, and I've got a very creative mind and had so many creative things I wanted to do, and so I just went for it.
How many years, say, from you being a runner to becoming a producer?
Oh, it's a difficult one, because what I did is, as well as working and being paid to work, I was also doing loads of free work for people. So people were getting me to produce their stuff for them, but you know, I wasn't a producer. I think to get paid producer level, it took me about 8 years.
So you alluded earlier about some big hip hop events that you were involved in, and one of them being the Hip Hop Honors that was done by VH1.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they had some of the biggest names in the hip hop industry, and I'd love for you to share with us what your role was in putting that together, and yeah, just what that experience was like, and having all these names pretty much in one place.
You know, I would say that was one of the most exciting times of my life, because I finally got to work with people who I had grown up with, right, who I'd admired my whole life. And I didn't just get to work with them, but I got to like sit next to them and know them and hang out with them. It was incredible. It really was incredible. Salt and Pepper, LL Cool J, Common, Ice Cube, Ice T. There were so many amazing hip hop acts I got to work with, and I was a producer. We were honouring those individuals, but then of course, you know, in attendance was you know, every hip hop name you could think of, and my role was to put together the packages that play. You know, when you watch an awards show and they do the little video, the little introduction of who that person is and where they've come from and all of that kind of stuff. So that was my role, was to kind of look after the celebrities that were being honoured. And it was incredible. It's strange because it didn't feel like I was working with, you know, celebrities. It just felt like a lot of hard work. I was managing a team of 20 writers from all over the US. I was managing a team in the office that was, 20 or 30 people. You know, I was working maybe 17, 18-hour days. So it was a real testament to how hard can you work, Samona, you know? But I think when you love what you do, it's a little bit easier. But yes, I think the highlight of that was definitely LL Cool J. And I don't think I told him this, but one of my first singles that I ever bought was his single, Mama Said Knock You Out.
Oh, you know what, Samona? Right? You beat me to it, because I was going to say, actually, the first album that I bought with my own money was Mama Said Knock You Out.
Mama Said Knock You. That was the track.
Oh, my days.
I never actually, I don't know if I got to tell him that.
Next time you see him, tell him Secret. That was the first album Secret bought with his own money, yeah?
I will. I'll remember that. I'm sure I'll be really pleased to hear it.
I hope so.
Great guy, amazing. No, he will. He actually, You know what's funny is, you know, you work with a lot of different celebrities, and some of them aren't the same as they are that you see on camera. But honestly, he was even nicer in real life than than he is on camera. He was such a supportive person. He was so humble. You know, he seemed surprised at every time. You know, when we'd be out in the street, and, you know, people would honk their horns and be like, LL, you know, you'd be walking down the street and everyone would be like, LL. And he seemed surprised. He'd kind of jump every time someone did that. And I was like, you don't know who you are? You know, but he was the kind of guy you could talk to and even forget that he was LL Cool J. You know, he was just so down to earth, and he's somebody who was interested in, you know, other people. So when he would talk to people, he would ask them how their day is and what they're doing, and that kind of thing. And I always admire that in such big stars, you know, because really they can just talk about themselves.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. Do you find then, I mean, I guess each individual's different, but do you find that because someone like LL has been in the game for so long, that's an understatement. You know, I think he started when he was like 16. But because he's been in the game and he's achieved what he's achieved, do you think people like him, I guess it's the case that they don't feel they have to prove themselves anymore. They don't feel like they have to show off their CV to anyone. Whereas maybe, again, even on this level, each individual is different, but people that are just getting into the game, you know, they sort of have to make that extra effort, and they may come across a bit egotistical, showing off a bit more because they feel they have more to prove.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I think the biggest stars I've ever met have always been the humblest, and the ones that have been on the come up have always been a little bit more difficult to work with. And I think that's absolutely true. I think, you know, someone like that, of that status, he doesn't need to tell you who he is or what he's done, right? And he doesn't need to prove himself. And so I think he's just, he's used to it, you know, and he's comfortable in his own skin, and he doesn't see the fame as defining him. I really felt that with him. He just really wasn't fazed by the whole being famous thing. He was just more like, you know, there wasn't this, do you know who I am, you know, kind of attitude that some people do have. He was very, very relaxed person. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear. That's good to hear, because as I say, you know, I used to have that track on repeat so many times.
We love LL, man. We love LL.
Shout out to LL Cool J. Great stuff. So I think as well, I mean, you're talking about hip hop honors. Do you think, because when was that? That was like early 2000s, 2004, 5, something like that?
Now you're asking me. No, I think it was 2007.
Oh, okay, so a little bit later. Do you think that in today's climate that there is enough space to honor those that have gone before and you know, laid the pathway for today's generation, or do you think they get overlooked?
I believe that they get overlooked. I think that I spend a lot of time trying to school people. It's really bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sounding like my parents. You know, when your parents would tell you, like, this song, I knew this song from back in the day, and like and I'm like, no, this is the new hot track, mum. You know, that's basically what's happening now, right? I think no one really understands the history of music, where it's come from, where it's been, and the people that have gone before. You know, and I think it's so incredibly important to understand the doors that people have opened. And if we take it back to the UK for a minute, I left the UK because I wanted to do music. I wanted to do music TV, and nothing was happening in the music industry here. And when I say nothing, it wasn't that nothing was happening, it's that no doors were being opened, right? They were just being slammed, and it was so difficult. And, you know, the Dizzy Rascals, the So Solids, and all those that came before, they had to work incredibly hard, so hard to get into the arenas that, you know, Stormzy's in now, and, you know, all these other people. And it's been interesting. It's been an interesting thing to watch, and I just really hope that the people that are listening into this music and stuff, they do take some time to listen to like the people that have come before, because I think in order to really understand the music and to understand where it's come from, you have to understand where it originated from, and what was happening in music before, right? And I'm even going back, so I'm going to go back to garage, and I'm going to go back to jungle, you know what I mean? And like, and just like that evolution that happened within music that brought us to hear grime and the rest of it. It was a journey that had to be taken in order to get to this stage. And I am so excited, Sekrit. Like, I sit back now, and people ask me this all the time. They're like, oh my gosh, what do you think about the UK music industry now? And I sit back now, and I didn't think I was going to see it happen, right? I really didn't think we were going to get to this stage where Drake is shouting out Heady One, you know what I mean, on his latest track. Like, I didn't think this was going to happen. When I was in the States, the only person they knew was Craig David, right? And that was the only export we had from here. And, you know, they'd be saying, you know, yo, what y'all doing in music? Like, what's happening? Like, what's happening with your people? You know, and you know, they knew Slick Rick. And you know, great. He set the bar, right? But then they didn't know anyone else, and I'd be like, oh well, you know, we've got this person, we've got that person, and I'd play them the track, and they'd be like, what is this, you know? And so it was really, really difficult. And we the UK here, because music, and I've spoken a lot about music, and you know, my background is entertainment, so I do all of it, but music influences everything. It influences fashion, culture, food, everything. And, you know, even what trainers you decide to pick up, you know, is influenced by what you've seen. So for me, seeing what the UK music industry is doing now and the influence it's having worldwide, where, you know, in the States, am I going to see people like, you know what I mean? Like doing grime now? Like, is this what's going to happen? It is so exciting because we're small, you know, we're a small island, and there's not too many of us. And to be able to influence the world, I think it's just a great thing. And I'm so excited to see what the new kids are going to do. But I do want everybody to go back and listen to the old stuff so that they can understand the new stuff, you know?
Yeah. I think as well, just to add, not just to understand, but also appreciate it more as well. Because I think not just appreciate the music back then, but when you understand the hardships, what it took to make that music, and you mentioned about it before, the doors that had to be, you know, pushed down. I think you appreciate the music now because of the journey that it's gone on. So I think it not only does it benefit the artist, the pioneer artist, but also it benefits the listener as well, because you listen to it with different ears. You go, oh wow, like, you know, this was inspired, this was influenced by this artist, you know what I mean? And your knowledge of the music, of the genre of music, expands so much. So sticking with the big hip hop programs that you were involved in, there was one in particular on Channel 4 as a series where you interviewed the likes of Rev Run, Russell Simmons, but there was one individual that I would love to know your thoughts about, and that's Chuck D, because he's a very a very influential voice within the hip hop community. And yeah, I would just love to know what that was like, sitting with him and hearing what he has to say, because he's not your average artist, and what it was like for him to, or for you even, to have him show some of his record collection as well.
You saw that?
Yeah, there's a photo. Simona, yeah. You did not hide that photo. That photo is on your website. It is there, plain to see for all of us.
I'm so, it was a moment going through Chuck D's record collection. Oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, yeah, so for Channel 4, so this was unprecedented, and I don't think they've done it, they've ever done it again, actually. But they decided to do a whole series on hip hop on Channel 4. It was called Hip Hop Nights, and we were exploring all the different sides of hip hop. So we looked at hip hop and religion, hip hop and its relationship to women. I was lucky enough to be the producer for that documentary. And I think it was hugely influential to a lot of people, because what it did is it showed the history of hip hop, where it came from, how it started, and who the pioneers were. And one of the greats is, of course, Mr. Chuck D. And I will forever hold that so dear to my heart, that I had the privilege of interviewing this man. And I was talking to you earlier about humility. And this is another individual who has so much humility. A lot of times when we go and interview these stars, or these big stars, they're always in, fancy hotels or just fancy places, right? And he was like, "Come to my house." I was like, really? Okay, so I'm just going to Chuck D's house, everyone. Okay, it's like, so that was brilliant. That was brilliant. He just had me there. He was just like, just come in. We're just chilling in the living room. And Sekrit, he spoke to me for 3 hours. 3 hours. I ran out of tape. I had a crew. So we had a crew of about maybe 3 people with me. And they were literally just doing this, just saying, just keep rolling, and they were running out of tape, and they were like trying to grab tape, and they were just like, just keep talking. It was gold dust. Chuck D, he is a veteran, right? So he's been there from the beginning, and he really broke down the music industry, the hip hop music industry. We spoke about all of the controversy around hip hop, when it came to women, when it came to portrayals of people, and all of that. And he really explained the reason why women are spoken about in certain ways, and where that history's come from and how that came about, and family and poverty and the American experience. And he went into it all, and he really opened my eyes. And I'm so sad that we don't have that 3 hour. If I could ever find that 3 hour interview, I think it would change a lot of people's lives, just to listen to him. He's vastly, incredibly intelligent. His vocabulary is, I can't find the words to describe his vocabulary, right? Because I don't have it. The way he describes things, he uses lots of metaphor and lots of very interesting and colourful language. An amazing person to speak to. And then he was just like, "Hang out, Simona." So I was like, "Cool." And he was like, "Let me show you a record collection." And he had it all, and he did actually give me a very rare LP of his. So I'm very grateful for that too. And so generous, very generous too. Amazing.
So you mentioned about different programs in this series. Which part was he mainly prominent in, or was he pretty much in all of them when it came to editing it?
So from what I remember, he was doing hip hop and religion, because that was one that I was concentrated on most. It was called Temple of Bling, and it was about how hip hop has become a form of religion for a lot of people, you know, and we interviewed a lot of rappers and artists about this concept of hip hop almost becoming godlike, right? To people, as in it's a way of life, it's a lifestyle, right? So what was happening at the time is people were living their lives by what they were taught in hip hop, right? They were being brought up, you know, in single parent homes, or sometimes they didn't have their parents. So, you know, and I speak to a lot of people even now, and they say, yeah, you know, hip hop raised me, you know, Tupac raised me. I learned everything I know about women from Biggie, you know, that's what was happening, right? And so we were exploring that and looking into why that has happened, why is it so influential, and whether it was a good thing really for people to idolize hip hop and use it almost as their moral compass, right? So it was their religion, it was their moral compass. It made them, you know, it gave them direction as to how to handle everything in life, and whether those messages that were being shown in hip hop were the right messages to be given to communities, and whether it was breaking the communities apart or whether it was building them up, right? And what Chuck D was saying is, you know, there was a time when hip hop was very much about, you know, improving and elevating and learning, right? And being aware of history and making changes and social impact, and, you know, right, you know, being against the police, you know, because they're not protecting us, and all this kind of stuff. And then what happened to hip hop is it became champagne and girls and fast cars. And then some people had a problem with that, right? But then other people said, listen, you know, it then became aspirational. You know, would Jay-Z be a billionaire now if hip hop didn't go in that direction? You know, isn't it a good thing that we wanted to accumulate money and status through material things? You know, that was a good thing, because now we can play in the same playing fields as everybody else. So that was an argument, you know, and it was interesting. My job, don't ask me what I think, because my job is to be objective. As a producer, I just listen. I'm just like, okay, that's what you think. But yeah, that's basically what it was about.
I just want to say to the listeners as well, a big shout out to Simona. She brought me and Judah out to New York. I think it was about a week, wasn't it? And yeah, it was an experience. It was a fun experience. So we managed to do a couple of shows out there.
What do you remember?
I remember a bit before. I remember meeting you a few weeks before, and then it was like we were talking about it, and then it was like, yeah, it's happening. We're going out. But I remember speaking to you on the phone, and I was in London, and I think you were in Miami at the time, and I said, yeah, we booked the tickets, and you said a particular date, and then I had to correct you, and you went, yeah, no, I meant that, and then when I put the phone down, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, does Simona think we're going out the week after? Because she's in Miami right now. So I sent you an email just saying like, yeah, we're all ready to go, we're all set for, and I put the date in the email. I don't know whether I underlined it or whatever, but made it quite clear. And I was like, yeah, because you said that date. The last thing I want is for us to go out there and you not be there, because we needed you, Simona. So, but then when we got there and the day after, so we landed in the evening. The day after we met up with you, you did actually share that you had to last minute get a ticket to New York because you did think it was the week after. and if it hadn't been for that email that I said, we would be stranded in New York, not knowing what to do.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll just be enjoying Times Square. That was it. But thankfully you came through, and you definitely opened us up to a world that was very, very interesting. And I also remember the first day, I think we were walking about and you'd hooked us up to do a show where they host the slam events, the slam poet events. And I remember you saying, I've got this show for you guys. Yeah. And you said what it was. And I was like, oh, wow, brilliant. And then you said, if they love you, like, they'll let you know. But if they don't like you, they'll let you know. And I was thinking, right, I hadn't even been in New York for 24 hours and I'm trying to digest this. We're in the mecca of hip hop. But thankfully, it was a really good show. And we did our thing and everyone really appreciated it. So it was great. And
they liked you, you see?
They
liked you.
They liked us and they showed it as well, which was great. Yeah, that was a real highlight for us. And I also remember you taking us to a particular record company as well. And me and Judah were talking about this afterwards, of years later. We were like, Judah said to me, Sekrit, you do realise that they pretty much offered us a record deal, right? And we were like, oh yeah. Yeah, they did. But, for reasons that I won't go into right now, we obviously didn't take that up. But it was really good to know that what we were producing wasn't just good to our ears, but to take it to the home of hip hop and for them to appreciate it and love it. I mean, just before we started, you said about you named someone who asked of me, and I do remember people saying, this is the hip hop that we love and that we miss, because at that time the mainstream hip hop sound was changing, and but there was still a core of people that loved that golden era of hip hop, should we call it, and which is what we were about sonically at that time. So it was great to know that, as I said earlier, that it was not just appreciated within our own circle, but taking it to that sort of world, so that was really cool. But there's some other stories that I won't go into right now, but
you don't want to share the stories? No. There were so many.
There were so many, Samona. There were so many that, but it was great. And I think as well, one thing I'd love to ask you, because it sounds like the world that you're in can be a whirlwind and can be, just non-stop. And I just wonder how you're able to cope with that. And if there has been a time it has got the better of you, how you've got through that, how you've managed to overcome that.
Well, I mean, you can tell the story, right? Because you were there. In fact, you and Judah, Sekrit and Judah, are the within the pillars of my story of my whole life, really.
Oh my gosh,
because
Samona, you're going to bring a tear to my eye. I'm not prepared for this.
Honestly, listen, let me tell you, because it wasn't until I was there, right, and we can't even talk about some of the things that was going on when I was in New York, the people I was around, and I was, like you said, I was in Miami, and I used to fly maybe 15, 20 times a month, everywhere, and, this kind of thing. The lifestyle was a little crazy. And Judah and Sekrit sit me down. I think we were in Times Square in that weird salad bar. There was a weird salad bar.
Yeah. That's when I think the guy shouted at me because I was trying to figure out what the coins were.
Right.
And he was getting quite impatient with me.
Come on. You know what you want? Like, keep going. Yeah. You cannot. There is no time to make this. If you don't know what you want, you keep it moving. Get out the queue. Yeah. Right. Get out the line. That's New York. Like, come on. You guys sat me down. You said, Simona, we're very worried about you. I was like, why? And they were like, this, you know, this lifestyle that you're living it's not sustainable. How are you going to survive? It's great and everything, but we haven't seen you sleep. We haven't seen you eat. You're constantly on the go, and you're surrounded by this craziness. And where's the normality? You know, I remember you said, do you remember this conversation?
You know what? It's coming back to me. It is coming back to me. Yeah, this is interesting.
Honestly, you guys did an intervention on me. You did an intervention.
Oh my gosh.
I remember this in the salad bar. And I was like, and it wasn't until I was around you guys and it was something familiar and something from home and something real and real people that I sort of went, oh. And I sort of looked around and I realized that, you know, I was in this bubble, this really strange bubble, and that, you know, it wasn't maybe the best thing for me to just be in that bubble. I needed to kind of, you know, find some grounding, find myself, you know, and be a little bit more, slow down a little bit is what you were saying. You guys were like, slow down. You know, because I was doing so much. I was working for the UK. I was still working for Channel 4 whilst I was in the States. But because of the time difference, I was doing nights. And then I was working during the day at VH1, MTV, and various record labels. And then I was working in Miami at the same time. So I was doing London, New York, Miami, all, you know, in one day. And it's a lot, right? And so, yes, in answer to your question, that conversation helped me.
Oh my days.
So thank you.
Oh,
shout out to Judah and Sekrit.
Hey, yeah. Big shout out to Judah Vasham, everyone. Big shout out. Yeah, that's my boy right there.
Judah, where are you? So it was always us three together, wasn't it? It was always me, you, and Judah. Always.
I think that was really important. Is that we did build this togetherness, the three of us. And actually, I'd only known you maybe just a month or two before. We connected pretty well when we did meet. And you'd known Judah for quite a while before then. But I think that was really special. It was a special time, and it's a time that I hold very dear to my heart. But yeah, I think that is interesting what you said there. So something that was familiar and something that was from home. That because it can feel like a movie, can't it? I mean, just New York in general, and there's other places around the world, I'm sure, that you can feel like this. But I remember walking around and sort of looking for a film director, because it was like everywhere I was walking into, I'd seen in a film. And so I was just expecting someone to go cut. But that's just on a tourist level. But to actually sort of be in that circle. Well,
I dragged you into that circle, didn't I?
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well. That's because me and Judah came out together. You know, we had each other to bounce off, and so we weren't getting lost in it because we had each other to sort of keep ourselves sane. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's really important in any industry, is to feel like you're not even to feel like, but to physically and practically not be alone. And that works both ways. That works from the individual who's going through it, but also the people around them or that they know to actually reach out. So, I mean, I'd actually forgotten that, but now that you say it, it does come back to me. So because we had and still have a genuine care and love for you, do you know what I mean? So it wasn't just like, oh, we need to, you know, just say this. It was because we cared for your sanity, you know, and we knew what you were doing and how hard you were working, and also not to dilute your passion. Do you see what I mean? But to still keep doing and be impactful as you are, but to have that balance. And I think that's really important, because I think what is pushed today is this notion of, you know, if you work hard, you'll get it, which I'm not saying is not true, but people take that to the extreme. It's like 24 hours. Because someone else is working 24 hours, I've got to work 24 hours and half an hour. Do you know what I mean? And because it can be so competitive. But the question is it worth your mental health? Is it worth your physical health? All of this.
Just taking up on what you were saying, I think now, though, people are putting their well-being a lot more paramount than they used to. I am noticing that in this industry, people aren't working as they used to work. So people are being a lot more balanced now. And a little, maybe because they now have the luxury to do that as well, because there's more space. Whereas when you're at a certain level and you're in a certain circle, you have to kind of stay there. There was a lot of pressure to be staying there, so you cannot be late, you cannot take time off, you cannot be sick, you cannot stop to eat. I went on tour with some high profile people, and they didn't eat, so I didn't eat, and they didn't sleep, so I didn't sleep. And I think now I've noticed that there's been a real kind of push towards people taking care of themselves and taking care of their mental health and all of those things, where I think that was very much dismissed back then. It wasn't important, and at the end of the day, if you didn't want that opportunity, someone else was going to take it, and that's how you felt all the time. There was always 10-20 people behind me all wanting to be in the position that I was in, because there was only one position, and that was horrible. It wasn't a nice environment to be in, because nobody could be happy for you and your success, because there wasn't any room for anybody else. And so it became, a competition. Is just waiting for you to slip up and waiting for you to be sick one day or not be late one day and come in and take that position. And one of the favorite things that I heard a lot when I was throughout my time in the industry is, Simona, if you don't want this, there's 300 people behind you that do. That's what they used to say to me. They used to show me piles of people's CVs and be like, look how many people want to be doing this, and it's like, now I think people are less, what's the word? They're less, it's easier to be in that kind of world. You know what I mean? It's not so remote anymore. You can get there. We can sit here now and we can do our own show. We don't need to knock on the door and ask someone to do it. And so we can get that same success. And I think that's actually helped the music industry now as well, because what's happened is, or the entertainment industry, because I've noticed now, back then, I will say in the UK, the support wasn't there. But now it definitely is there. Everybody's supporting everybody else, because there's room for everyone to be there.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because you're also sort of highlighting not only people being driven so much to work these hours, but also there's the pressure from above that they have to put the work in, and then when it becomes more that you're serving that machine, I guess that's when the joy, the enjoyment goes out the window, I guess, doesn't it? Because you don't want to be the one that misses out. And then people feel like, oh, if only I did just do that, even though I was really tired and I was sick. Someone's now got on that stage because I was too tired. And so it's a really tricky one.
And that happened a lot to me in New York, and I think that's why I wasn't sleeping. I was actually, as I was preparing for this interview, I started thinking back of when you guys came around that sort of time. And I remember being very, very, very exhausted. And when I say exhausted, people, I don't know if anyone's ever been so tired where they're actually seeing things. Okay.
Wow.
But literally I was hallucinating because I was that tired. And I used to, you know, my friends still make fun of me now. My friends from New York would be like, yeah, you used to fall asleep like wherever we were. You could be in a club, you could be on a train, you could be anywhere, you'd fall asleep. And I, you know, because sometimes I wouldn't sleep for 3 days straight. And there was one time where I said, no, I'm actually going to sleep. I'm not going to pick up my phone. I'm going to sleep. And my phone was ringing and ringing, Sekrit. It was ringing all night. And I was just like, no, you know, I'm not picking it up. And I woke up to how many missed calls. And then I'd missed out. Someone called me and they were like, where were you last night? And I said, why? And they were like, well, you were supposed to be at this party and X and X were there. And they wanted to meet you. And I was like, and they were like, yeah, call her, tell her to come out. And I was just like, you know, and that was a job. I missed out on a job because I was sleeping, literally sleeping. Right? So I used to feel like I couldn't do that. I used to feel like I couldn't sleep, and I used to feel like I couldn't make mistakes and I couldn't be human and I had to be a machine. Because that is the nature of the beast when you're working at the very top. And it is a lot of pressure. And you mentioned something interesting. Are you happy? And I'm trying to think, Sekrit, if I was actually happy. And I can't tell you because I can't remember it, which is sad. You know, it's sad that I don't even have that. So, you know, I think something, you know, now which is good is that, you know, the nature of how people are working is a lot different, I think. You know, people seem to be more accepting, right?
Yeah, definitely. So do you feel like now your, lack of a better way of saying this, work schedule is more balanced today than it ever was? Or is it still something that you have to purposefully make time for yourself?
So because I worked that way and I made myself very ill working that way, which I never thought could happen, but it can. So I now have to schedule rest times in, and I have very strict schedules which incorporate rest and rejuvenation and well-being. And you know something, Sekrit? Every day I wake up in the morning and I journal and I ask myself if I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And if I'm not happy, then I don't do it. And that's great. And it's a kind of, it sounds like a luxurious position to be in, but happiness is within, right? So you kind of have to make choices as to how you're going to navigate the things you want to do within life, because there's things that you have to do, right? There's things we have to do that that don't make us happy or we don't enjoy it. But if you're doing that thing because you know you're getting to that goal that you want to go to, then you can still find happiness, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting. Samona, you did a art exhibition that was covered in The Guardian and also was showcased at the Royal Albert Hall. It was a exhibition called Bound. Now, with this art exhibition, it was also showed at the Brick Lane Gallery, wasn't it? But it wasn't just any sort of art exhibition. In fact, most art exhibitions have a lot more meaning to it than just looking at it. But your one had a particular meaning because it was based on something that you were and still are going through in terms of now I'm going to ask you what it's called because I don't know how to pronounce it, but there's an illness that you're persevering through. And I was just wondering if you could, two things, explain what that is, but also how that inspired your Bound art piece.
Okay, so we're getting into the difficult stuff now. So I think I alluded to it before about, you know, working really hard and it getting the better of me. So I was diagnosed in 2009 with a condition that is called Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. And what that is basically the connective tissues that are made up in my body are weaker than most people's. So I tear and break them very easily. So we're made up completely of connective tissues, right? Our stomachs, our hearts, our throats. And so with me, I get little collapses within the body. And the reason why some people live their whole lives and they don't even know that they have this condition, because, you know, they're very careful with their bodies. I wasn't. I was working mine to the ground, you know, flying all over the place and doing this crazy career that I was doing. And I also had a car crash. I don't know if I knew when I had the car crash. No, I think it was...
No. It was just, I think I met you just after that. Maybe, well, I say just, maybe it was a year or so after, but I do remember you telling me about that and how... Yeah.
So that was kind of the catalyst of it all. I had a very bad car crash where the car flipped over several times. Not my fault. I wasn't driving. I was taking a very long time to recover from this, and they couldn't work out what was wrong, and so I just thought, oh well, there's nothing wrong, and I just kind of continued on. But from the time of the car crash, I was finding it very difficult to like stand or walk or anything, but I wasn't quite sure what was wrong. And then fast forward to, I moved out of entertainment TV and I started working in film, and that was even more stressful than working in music. I was working with Hollywood producers, New Line Cinema, lots of big names, and it was an extremely stressful, pressurized job. And I was in Dubai, doing a movie, and I collapsed. I got rushed back to the UK. They didn't know what was wrong. I was in hospital for a year. And to cut a long story short, I was diagnosed with this condition. The story doesn't end with the diagnosis, because what it means is that lots of different types of things can happen to me. I can have lots of different injuries. And one of the major injuries I had was the artery to the right side of my brain collapsed. And so if you imagine it like a straw, so it collapsed like inwards. The blood didn't get to the right side of my brain, and I had not just one but 3 strokes, where I had 5% chance of survival. In fact, even now the neurologist says he doesn't actually know how I'm able to speak, because the whole of so if you look at my brain scan, the whole of my right side of my brain it's not working at all. And so I had to spend a couple of years, I couldn't dress myself, I couldn't feed myself, basics, and I couldn't speak or swallow. And because I lost my brain capacity, I found it hard to recall words and hard to understand things. And, literally I had brain damage, and I had paralysis as well, and so that was probably one of the biggest things, biggest challenges I've ever had in my life, was learning how to speak again. Because I was like, come on now, you can take everything from me, but don't take my ability to speak, right? I need to be able to speak. I want to communicate. I'd be sitting there and people would be saying things to me. I like to talk. So I'd be like, I need to be able to talk. So thank God I now am able to speak. And basically, the body is an amazing thing, because what's happened is everything I do now, I do on my left side of my brain. So things that everyone else does from their right side, my left side has learned how to do it now. Oh my gosh. Is incredible. Wow. Yeah, it's weird. The only time when it's weird is when, when they show you on social media and those little memes, I don't know, like things are like, which way is the girl dancing? Or like, what color is the dress? Or things like that. I always have like the weirdest answers, and that's because my brain, I don't use the same side of my brain as most people. Wow. So I don't know. I'm hoping it helps me creativity somehow.
I know you're going to get onto the Bound project, but did you have to go through any therapy or anything like that? And if so, how intense was that?
So I've had ongoing therapy. I still am in therapy. I've had lots of different, I've had physiotherapy, speech and language therapy. I had to learn how to swallow again, because your swallowing is what controls your speech. I didn't know that. So I've had, so I've had lots of, every different type of doctor you can think of. I think has probably worked with Samona, from neurologists to rheumatologists to they've all one day I'll write a book, Sekrit, of the experiences that I've had. But I was in hospital on and off for years. I think maybe 7 years. I spent more time in hospital than I did out.
Wow.
So, and I know I probably sound like I'm making light of it. It's not even that. It was serious, right? It was serious. I'm very lucky to be here, and I had to go through being in a wheelchair. I had to go through having people do everything for me. I had to have carers. I was unable to do the most basic human things that we do every day. I wasn't able to do. I was told I wasn't going to be able to walk again, or talk again, or be able to walk around without having oxygen or fluids, or all these different things. I've got pictures of me with so many different tubes through my arms. I still have the marks on my arms from all the tubes. It was a awful experience, and I'm still going through it. I still have the diagnosis, and I still have to be very, very careful. But thank God it's, I'm 90% there now.
So this inspired the Bound project.
Yeah. So I think when we think of sickness and we think of disability, we think of it as something that would never happen to us. Especially if you work in the industries that we work in. We're in entertainment, we're artists and creatives, we don't get sick, and disability and the idea of disability is something so far removed from our lifestyles and the lifestyles that we're involved with when we're in the entertainment industry. A lot of people have never even stepped inside a hospital before. And then it happened to me, somebody who was, in film and TV and all of those things, and, fashion, this industry is very, very, very superficial, and it's filled with people who look a certain way and act a certain way. And, we don't really see people in wheelchairs, or people who are sick, or people who look different, right? And then there I was, it happened to me, and it didn't stop me from being me. So it was an incredibly difficult thing for me to accept, because I was a creative and I was an artist. And when you're creative and you're an artist and you're in an environment that is bland and depressing, and it felt so unnatural to me. My mind was just filled with colour and music and art and all these things, and I think at one point I said to my doctor, I said, I started hiding my tablets, Sekrit, inside my hospital mattress. I can say this now. My family know. I admitted it. I started slossing them into the hospital mattress, because I was so concerned. I was on at one point 15 different opioids and drugs, including morphine. And I couldn't creatively focus. I was like a shell of myself. I was like 5% of Samona. My whole personality went, and my whole all the things that, all the creativity that used to go on in my mind, it was just gone. It was just blank. I was just numb. I was like this numb shell of a person, just going through the hours of my life. And I was like, I feel like I'm in a prison. I feel like I'm in jail. I feel like I felt like I was going crazy. And I communicated this to a good friend of mine, shout out to Anthony King. And he says, Simona, you are still a creative, it's still in you. And I was like, it's not, it's gone. Whatever it was, wherever it was, it's gone. And he was like, okay, well, tell me how you feel. And so I started to say, I feel like I'm lying in this bed and I still feel like me. I still feel creative. I still feel colourful. But then when you look at me, I just look bland, and I'm in this hospital gown, and everything's so generic and boring and bland and abysmal, and it's just sickness all around me. And we said, okay, let's take that and let's create that in an image. And so we created this image called Bed. And it's me, and I'm lying on a bed, and I'm looking really, really glamorous on this bed. But then I'm surrounded by all these pills around me. So when you look closely into the picture, you see that I'm suffering. But on the outside, it looks as if, I'm in this kind of glamorous world, because that's how I felt. I felt like this strange feeling of like I'd gone from this high-powered, fast, glamorous world into a world of ventilators and death and despair and depression, and it was, it was two very different worlds. And what I wanted to communicate through that project was a different side of sickness, and the mental, the challenges mentally that you can face going through something like that, right? Because I think people always think of sick people and disability in a certain way, and they definitely don't think of it as being something creative or something beautiful even. And so we created these images that were beautiful, stunning 6-7 foot images that were showcased in the Royal Festival Hall and in Brick Lane Gallery, and they were part of the Women Empowerment Festival, and they were in The Guardian, and they were these images that people haven't really seen before. There's ones of me in the wheelchair, but I'm kind of wrapped in tape. I'm wrapped in this tape that says fragile. I don't have anything else on, just the tape. And it's like, it's a cool image, right? Until you realize that actually she really is in a wheelchair. She really is disabled, and she's not, it's not just this cool, yellow tape around her. There's more to this story. And yeah, so that's kind of how Bound came about, really. It was an outlet for me. I think as creators and artists, when we're put in positions of suffering, we have to create. It's the only way. It's almost like a madness that we have inside us. I think people who aren't artists, they don't really get it. I think everybody thought I was crazy trying to do an art exhibition in the middle of, like, I think at one point I lost the ability to use my hand, and they were just like, I think actually when the exhibition was going on, I was in hospital. So I didn't even get to see people's reactions to the images because I was in hospital, But but it was important to me, and I'm glad I did it. And, I think when you are an artist, you have to create.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. It's like, I physically can't not do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's like breathing to me.
Mm-hmm.
One day I can understand people not doing it as a profession, but to say, oh, I'm not going to be an artist anymore, I don't understand that. I don't understand that, because it's something that you are. It's a part of who you are. And as I say, yeah, it's like breathing. It's like breathing for me, you know. So I imagine that was the case for you as well, is that no matter the physical struggle you were going through, you managed to find a way to still create art, but not just create any art, but it told a story of what you were going through at that particular time. And I can imagine as well that not only is it beneficial for you, but it's also helping others that will see or have seen this piece of art, that have gone through or are going through something very, very similar. So yeah, well done on that. That's fantastic stuff. Samona, you have a new venture which is pretty interesting. It's called Coco to Thrill. I mentioned at the top of the show that you are the CEO of Coco to Thrill. I'm not going to give it away. I want you to explain to the people out there, what is Coco to Thrill?
Coco to Thrill. It's exactly that. It's cocoa and it's thrilling. It's chocolate. It's chocolate.
Chocolate. It's not any. It's not just any type of chocolate.
It's not just any type of chocolate. So if you imagine if fashion and chocolate had a baby, they would name it Coco to Thrill.
Oh, would they?
Yeah.
Now? Okay. that is sub-statement, Samona. That is sub-statement.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what's happened.
Right,
you know, that's what's happened.
Yeah.
I've always loved, I don't know, anybody who knows me, any restaurant I used to go to, I'd look at the dessert menu first. Okay, I am obsessed. Right, and
when we were in New York, we did spend quite a bit of time at an ice cream place. I do remember that.
Ice cream place, yes, exactly. Ice cream. I used to eat chocolate cake for lunch. I used to, you know, it'd be very rare that I would eat food. I just used to just eat cakes and chocolate all the time. It's just, you know, so it's not too much of a surprise to most people that I now own a chocolate company. They're like, of course, you know, that's the way you were always going to go. So yeah, it's really, really exciting actually. Somehow, some way, in the midst of all of this, so in the midst of illness, in the midst of, you know, this crazy entertainment career I've had and all of this, out of this, in the last kind of couple of years, Coco to Thrill has been born. And Coco to Thrill is a chocolate company, but it's, yeah, like you said, it's not just chocolate. It's, look, this is the way I look at it. If you're going to treat yourself, okay, you need to treat yourself with the most amazing, most extravagant, most beautiful thing you can find, right? And that's what Coco to Thrill is, right? So it's decadent, it's indulgent, it's extravagant, you know, there's gold on it and it's beautiful. So I've created chocolate art pieces that you can eat. So we have chocolate shoes, and we have miniature little painted artistic chocolate shoes and lipsticks. And we're now expanding into men's stuff, which you'll be happy to hear, Sekrit. So coming very soon.
You should not have said that to me. You shouldn't have said that to me.
Yeah, don't worry, it'll be delivered through your door.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, and you know, it's in its infancy. It's a brand new venture, but it's been pretty successful so far. So we were featured on Channel 5 on The Wonderful World of Chocolate, which you can still watch now. I think it's episode 6. And they kind of followed me, kind of putting together. I had to get 100 chocolate shoes to Dubai. So they followed me doing that with my amazing team. And then we also...
Wait. Did you just say you had to send the chocolate over to Dubai?
Yes.
So how did it not melt?
Yeah, well, so there's a blog. So if you go to cocotothrill.com, you type it in, there's a blog at the bottom that shows how we shipped it without it melting. Right. And you can actually watch it on the show as well. It shows you how we managed to achieve that. And then we did Arab Fashion Week. So Coco to Thrill is the official partner of Arab Fashion Week. And so we launched in Dubai on the catwalks. We had all the front row eating the chocolate and celebrating chocolate. It was an amazing, beautiful thing. I have a media background, so we had we'd filmed some like cool visuals and images, and we had these 14-foot screens in the middle of City Walk in Dubai, so you could see Coco to Thrill there. So that was really, really exciting. And then we launched in the world's first ready couture store over there. So if you ever do go to Dubai and you go to City Walk, we're in 1422, which is the Arab Fashion Council's store. And inside you'll find the chocolate shoes in glass cases covered in Swarovski crystals. You can buy them and you can eat them. Even though they are, people do say, wow, they look like little pieces of art. And I've met some fashion designers. One of them, he's Italian, and he said, oh, Simona, I have one of your chocolate shoes on my mantelpiece in Italy in a glass case. I said, you haven't eaten it yet? He was like, no, I can't eat it. So, but people do. You can eat it. And it is as delicious as it looks, because I'm all about the flavors. Everything has to have substance. If it looks good, it better taste good too. It smells good, tastes good. We do lots of different flavors. And are you a chocolate fan?
I like my chocolate. Yeah, I like my chocolate.
Yeah?
But I'd like to think I'm quite sensible with it.
Yeah?
Yeah. Maybe.
Well, you're not going to be sensible with Coco to Thrill.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. Yeah, because I tend to go through stages where maybe once a week, maybe a Friday evening, watching a film. Yeah, you got to have some sort of you got to have some sort of chocolate while watching maybe a Marvel film or something like that. But yeah,
Are you not an everyday chocolate person? You're just trying to show restraint.
Yeah, I probably can be. And I may have gone through a phase where I was, but yeah, I think you think differently when you're a dad now, like, and you just, I know I'm getting a little bit heavy here, but yeah, you think actually I want to be around. Well, generally I want to be around anyway, but particularly.
Hang on, let me clear something up. Chocolate is actually good for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
know that a little bit of chocolate a day is
good
for
no,
you.
I'm
Sugar
sure.
That's not bad.
Sugar
is bad for you. But our chocolate is, it's called Coco to Thrill. It has a high cocoa content. And cocoa, it's been used for 3,000 years plus for all kinds of health benefits, and in anything it gives your mood a boost, it increases serotonin. And they actually did you know they gave chocolate, little squares of chocolate to people during the war as a ration, as something that you have to have every day, like, to help the troops through, the hard times.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. It's interesting because I remember when we were in Ghana a few years ago, they advertise chocolate milk cans as energy drinks. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I found really interesting, and it would have a footballer on the can, as if it was like Lucozade or something like that. So
chocolate. Listen, chocolate can be good for you. I am a big believer actually in not depriving yourself of treats, because treats are important for the body. We're talking about balance. One of the things about balance is that, people on these health kicks, they're always like, yeah, I'm cutting everything out and I'm fasting for 4 days. No, like, your body needs treats. It needs sugar and it needs chocolate, and it needs these things to be able to function. Just, in moderation, yes. But, our chocolate lasts for years, so you can buy loads of it and just keep it in the house and eat a little bit a day.
Yeah. Well, going back to your question, I'd like to think I'm pretty balanced with it. I enjoy it on a nice occasion. So
good.
Well, that sounds really exciting, and
you're going to be enjoying a lot of it now because you've got a friend who's in chocolate. So that's it. Anytime you need chocolate,
you're the person to call.
Exactly. I've got you.
Definitely. Simona, thank you so much for being my guest on the Sekrit Podcast. Thank you for sharing all the stories and the knowledge that you've gained through your experiences, and I'm sure that it will inspire and be really helpful to all the listeners out there. So thank you so much for your time. And I mean, to be honest, there's possibly more that we could go through, but I think we'll hold it there for now. We'll let the people.
I'll come back for part 2.
Yeah.
You know,
Let's keep them waiting for a little bit longer. So, but yeah, as I say, thank you, Samona, so much for giving up your time and sharing what you've shared. Is there no pressure? But is there any final words you want to say? Anything?
Well, I just want to say thank you to you, Sekrit. Thank you for this platform. I want to congratulate you and tell you, I think it's amazing what you're doing. These things, they take so much hard work, so much dedication, and it's so hard sometimes to stay consistent when you've been doing it for so long. But I'm just so proud to see that you're still at it, you're still doing it, and you're still doing it big. And, I'm looking forward to seeing all of your successes. And I just hope that you have me in the passenger seat sometime too, and you fly me over and get me that deal too, right? Because that's what it's about. And we've had a very, very long journey together, and it's still going. There is no end. And it's so exciting that here we are all these years later, and we're in 2 different locations, and we're able to put together this piece of content, and so well done, and I'm just excited to see what's coming next out of your secrets world.
Yes, thank you very much. Cool. All right, so you've been listening to the Sekrit Podcast. Peace out.
Sekrit.